Rescue work continues in Libya after a deadly airstrike on a migrant detention center. Colombia's ELN has reaffirmed their commitment to continue peace talks with the government. Thousands of workers are on the streets of South Korea demanding higher wages. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Doris Polo, and this is From the South. Rescue workers are still collecting the bodies of dozens of migrants who were killed overnight after an airstrike targeted a migrant detention center outside the Libyan capital Tripoli. According to the Ministry of Health, at least 40 people were killed and more than 130 have sustained injuries following the airstrike on the facility, which was housing 120 migrants. Tripoli has been ravaged by intense fighting since April, when military allied to Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive to overthrow the UN-backed government of national accord. The country has been in chaos since former Prime Minister Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown by NATO-backed forces, leading to widespread violence and the prevalence of slave markets.
Some people wounded and they die on the road on their way running, and some people are still under the block. So we don't know what to say. All what we know is we want UN to help people out of this place, because this place is dangerous. We know it's going to happen like this before, but we don't have any power to do anything. So there's small children and there's some people that stranded here. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. Like me, I don't know what to go. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go.
Following the attack, the United Nations Refugee Agency called for the evacuation of migrant detention centers in Libya, as well as a thorough investigation into the strike. A spokesperson for the UNHCR added that Europe must finally shift its approach to the humanitarian crisis gripping the Mediterranean and provide aid for migrants trying to flee extreme poverty and war.
We know that both sides have the coordinates of these detention centres. Both sides are aware where these detention centres are located and that there are people inside those detention centres at the time being. So what needs to happen now is a full and thorough investigation. Those found to be responsible need to be held to account. Having airstrikes drop on a civilian building in this way is a violation of international humanitarian law, and there needs to be action taken now against those responsible and to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Union has
There has to be a shift now from Europe in how we approach the Mediterranean situation. There needs to be an end to the toxicity of the political debate around what to do with refugees and migrants. There needs to be an end to politicians seeing this as a political trophy to win, and it needs to be reframed as a primarily humanitarian issue. We need to see an end to the policies that serve as a deterrent to NGO search and rescue vessels, and we need states to work together to ensure that no one is returned to Libya at this time.
The African Union has also condemned the airstrike in Libya. The chairman of the AU Commission issued a statement calling for an independent investigation to bring those responsible to justice. He further urged all warring parties to cease fire and return to the negotiation table. Our correspondent in the Middle East, Nayara Tardo, has the details.
More than 40 people died, with many more injured during an aerial attack against a migrant detention center in Tripoli, the capital of Libya. Local media outlets are reporting that the attack has been attributed to forces loyal to Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar. The attack has drawn international condemnation. The African Union has released a communique criticizing the attack and calling for an immediate independent investigation to ensure that those responsible face justice. The UN emissary to Libya, Ghassan Salam, denounced the attack as a war crime, also calling for an independent investigation, referring to the attack as a breach of human rights. The EU representative for Foreign Affairs, Federica Mogherini, also added her name to the list of people calling for investigation. The attack took place at night, specifically against this migrant detention center.
That was Nayara Tardo with that report. Moving on, Colombian Senator for the FARC party, Jesus Santrich, is still missing after leaving his security team in Tierra Grata last Saturday. The government of Iván Duque didn't hesitate in claiming that he had run away, thus breaching the peace agreement.
FARC Senator Julian Assange says Jesus Santrich didn't inform the party about his decision to abandon his security scheme, nor about his intention of going into hiding for security reasons.
We are waiting because we are concerned about the complaints regarding security issues. But we were not aware of his intentions because, as I said before, he did not officially communicate anything to the party.
For some politicians, it's crucial to clarify what's happened to Santrich and leave speculation to one side.
If the circumstances are not clear, it is easy to jump to harmful conclusions that are not serious, especially in a case of this magnitude.
Some analysts say the congressman hasn't failed the peace process before, and it remains unclear why he decided to abandon his security scheme.
Santrich is not incarcerated and doesn't have any restriction of movement. As a congressman, he even has more privileges in moving around than the other citizens. He doesn't have to ask for permission to move around within the country. So this all looks like political persecution, a scandal of a sort, made up by the president against Mr. Santrich.
As for the government, they say Santrich ran away, abandoning the peace deal and mocking the authorities.
It is very worrying that the government and the tabloids are all claiming that Santrich ran away. They label him a criminal, and their behavior in a way justifies Santrich's disappearance. Their speeches are full of hate. They undermine guarantees of peace process for ex-combatants during their reincorporation process.
For the FARC party, it's crucial that Santrich clears up any doubts about his whereabouts over the coming days, as well as whether he will appear before the Supreme Court of Justice on July 9th.
The Colombian National Army, Liberation Army rather, has reasserted its desire to restart peace talks with the government of Iván Duque. The ELN delegation in Cuba said it had delivered a summary of the progress made in previous talks to the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and to the International Committee of the Red Cross. They said it was important to build on what had already been achieved.
On July 3rd in the Vatican, Rome, we formally delivered this package of agreements through a group of priests who defend peace and human rights. The aim of this is to make clear that in any future talks, we should continue to build on what has been achieved in the previous process, so that the agreements and progress that we made then does not get lost, and we do not have to start from scratch when a new round of talks gets underway.
The ELN delegation also said that for the dialogue process to continue, it is essential that regions affected by the armed conflict receive humanitarian relief.
A bilateral ceasefire must also provide humanitarian relief to the population, especially in the areas most affected by the armed conflict. We have repeatedly expressed that we support a bilateral cease. We are in favor of doing it as soon as possible, as it would benefit the process as a whole.
CARICOM heads of government are meeting in St. Lucia for the 40th regular meeting of CARICOM. Our correspondent in St. Lucia, Alison Kentish, has the details.
The 40th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, gets underway here in St. Lucia today with an official opening ceremony set for 4 p.m. Now, ahead of that meeting, CARICOM's Secretary General Erwin Larocque has been briefing the media on some of the topics the leaders are expected to discuss during their 3 days of deliberation. And they include some of the most pressing issues facing this region presently, including climate change, tackling the region's ballooning food import bill, strengthening the grouping single market and economy, border concerns, as well as crime and security. Now, Venezuela is also down for discussion, and Secretary General Erwin Larroque said on Tuesday that the group of countries will continue to adhere to the principles of non-interference and non-intervention, as CARICOM remains committed to assisting with a peaceful resolution. Venezuela is participating in this meeting as an observer country. Venezuela's Vice Minister for the Caribbean arrived in St. Lucia on Tuesday, and the country's embassy here in St. Lucia says he will be working to deepen integration between Venezuela and the CARICOM. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres will be the special guest speaker at today's opening ceremony. St. Lucia's Prime Minister and incoming Chairman of CARICOM, Alan Chasney, outgoing Chairman, St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris, and CARICOM Secretary General Erwin Larroque are also expected to address the opening.
That was Alison Kentish with that report. We'll take a short break now. Join us in a few. Welcome back. China and Mexico have again condemned interference in Venezuela by the United States. At a meeting in Beijing, the foreign ministries of both countries said that the situation in Venezuela should be solved through dialogue between the government and representatives of the opposition. Wang Yi said China was opposed to sanctions or any kind of military intervention, while Marcelo Ebrard said Mexico hopes that the talks already underway will soon bear fruit. This comes as Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has reconfirmed the government's commitment to dialogue with the opposition taking place in Norway, saying that there will be good news next week.
I am certain, more than certain, that in 2019 we will achieve a significant agreement of peace and understanding, dialogue and democracy for Venezuela. I am sure, I am absolutely certain.
Still in Venezuela, Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza, given a detailed report about his recent trip to Europe, said it marked an important step forward for the government's diplomacy of peace.
In the company of his vice ministers for U.S. and multilateral affairs, Arreaza described his busy agenda in Italy, Austria, Spain, and Portugal. He said it showed the strength of Venezuela's foreign policy based on peace and the call for dialogue.
Our chosen path is that of dialogue and peace, and nothing will divert us from that. You have seen how President Maduro has stood firmly in favor of dialogue through the Oslo mechanism, despite the attacks, plots, attempted coup, and pressure from the United States.
In all the bilateral meetings with the governments of those countries, Venezuela reasserted its commitment to promote harmony and to continue to fight to unblock the country's resources, which have been sequestered as a result of Washington's unilateral coercive measures.
We cannot use our resources due to the measures imposed by the U.S. government. That's why we'll do everything it takes to ensure that those resources are handed back to the Venezuelan people.
In Germany, the foreign minister said he had discussed steps to restart cooperation with a number of German companies. As for the situation of Venezuelan patients unable to access medical treatment abroad because of the blockade, Arreaza said that Cuba and Turkey have offered to treat them.
Guyana's cabinet has approved a proposal to remove custodial sentences for persons caught with small amounts of marijuana. This applies to 30 grams of marijuana or less. And while possession is still an offense, people will not be sentenced to prison anymore. The decision comes as the government considers a recently submitted CARICOM report on the usages of marijuana, and in particular by Rastafarians who require it for use in their worship and sacrament. A Tanzanian citizen has been sentenced to life in prison for his role in the 2015 Garissa University College attack, which left 148 people dead in Kenya. 2 other militants were jailed for 41 years each. The attack was the second deadliest in the country. The suspects were found guilty of conspiracy to commit a terrorist attack and of belonging to the Al-Shabaab armed group, which has links to Al-Qaeda.
I will sentence him to commission of a terrorist act on each of the counts 2 to 150, where he will serve life imprisonment. Therefore, the first and second accused person will serve 41 years imprisonment each.
The Zimbabwean government has hailed its bilateral relationship with China while condemning misleading negative publicity from Western countries. Zimbabwe's information minister has urged citizens not to be swayed by negative propaganda, which mainly comes from the West against China's relationship with African countries. China is currently collaborating with Zimbabwe on several projects, including construction and infrastructure development.
Zimbabwe is happy to have China as an ally. China is a powerful global player, which even other powerful nations are keen to befriend. Government urges all Zimbabweans to show their tolerance, their hospitality, their love, their friendliness towards investments that employs our people, investments that supports our economy.
The African Union and Ethiopian mediators have invited Sudan's ruling generals and protest leaders to resume talks in Khartoum as they seek a breakthrough on creating a new governing body for the country. The call to attend talks comes as tensions remains high between the two sides after a deadly crackdown on June 3rd on a protest camp that killed dozens and wounded hundreds.
We have invited the two parties for a meeting tomorrow, and we have fixed for them a time and place. It is not appropriate for political and security reasons to disclose the time and venue, but this invitation has been sent to both parties.
There is one point where opinions are conflicting, and that is the Sovereign Council.
The Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has said that Tehran will increase uranium enrichment if it doesn't see efforts to preserve the nuclear deal from European signatories. President Rouhani said that Iran still supports the deal, saying that it is to everyone's benefit. However, he questioned the commitment of European countries that signed the agreement. The Iranian president said that steps being taken or are being taken now and can still be reversed, but that the Arak reactor will be reopened on July 7th if progress isn't made. Rouhani added that the best thing for the United States to do is, quote, amend the mistake it made by pulling out of the agreement.
From July 7th, we will take the next step. If the European signatories to the JCPOA wish to express regret, then please do it now. Or if you wish to issue a communiqué, then please issue one now. From July 7th, our level of uranium enrichment will no longer remain at 3.67%. We will put this commitment to a cap on enrichment to one side. We will increase the cap to whatever level we deem is essential for us and to a level that we need. You must also know that if you do not fulfill all your obligations to us under the agreement and in the agreed time frame, then from July 7th, the Arak nuclear reactor will return to its previous activities.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Moscow and Pyongyang are intensifying their partnership in several areas, including military cooperation. Russia's Deputy Defense Minister made the disclosure during his meeting with the Vice Minister of the People's Armed Forces in the North Korean capital. He said Russia appreciates the development of the contacts between the two countries, saying that the meeting between Russia's leader Vladimir Putin and his Korean counterpart Kim Jong-un was of paramount importance.
High-level contacts give additional impetus to bilateral relations in various fields, including military cooperation. We note that interdepartmental cooperation has intensified recently, including that at a high level.
China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Geng Shuang has dismissed British efforts to interfere in Hong Kong, describing them as shameless. China has made a diplomatic complaint following comments by the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. The Foreign Ministry said the senior British diplomat is stuck in the fantasy of colonialism by days gone by. Geng added that events in China's special administrative region are a purely internal affair.
The UK has had firstly no sovereignty, secondly no authority, and thirdly no powers of supervision over Hong Kong since the handover. There is absolutely no such thing as this so-called responsibility. The UK placing itself as the protector of Hong Kong at every turn is a purely self-constructed illusion. To say that the freedoms of Hong Kong residents are something Britain strive for is simple shameless. I would like to ask Mr. Hunt, during the British colonial era in Hong Kong, was there any democracy to speak of? Hong Kongers didn't even have the right to protest.
In South Korea, tens of thousands of casual workers in the public sector have taken to the streets of Seoul. They are demanding that President Moon Jae keep his promise to give them the status of regular employees and increase their wages. The demonstration is the start of a 3-day strike by an alliance of school workers. A reported 50,000 workers are taking part in the protest, which is supported by the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. The workers also want a pay rise of more than 6%, while the government says it can only offer a 1.8%. A group of activists have gathered outside London's Belmarsh prison on Wednesday to celebrate the 40th birthday of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Assange supporters sang happy birthday and even brought a cake along with a message condemning his possible extradition to the United States. Assange, who is currently serving a 50-week sentence for breaching bail conditions, will face a 5-day U.S. extradition hearing next February. He was indicted on 18 counts, including charges under the Espionage Act. A court in Sicily has refused to expel the captain of the Sea-Watch migrant rescue ship after the Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini said he was ordering her deportation to Germany. Carola Rackete was released from house arrest on Tuesday. She had been arrested 3 days earlier after steering her ship carrying 41 migrants from Africa through a naval blockade into the port of Lampedusa. A judge said Rackete had not broken the law because she was carrying out her duty to save lives. Our correspondent Sergio Rodrigo has more.
The Italian justice system has allowed Carola Rackete, the captain of the migrant rescue vessel, the Sea-Watch 3, to walk free. She had spent several days under house arrest in Sicily in the south of Italy. The captain had been accused of disobedience, but the Italian judiciary found that it wasn't safe for the more than 40 migrants who were rescued when making the journey across the Mediterranean to disembark in Libya or Tunisia. The Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini has attacked the captain as well as other NGOs working to save migrants. He released his latest communique saying that he was expelling Rackete to Germany, but a court in Sicily rejected that. Salvini wants to fine NGOs saving migrants up to 50,000 euros for doing so.
That was Sergio Rodrigo with that report. Moving to Bolivia, a neighborhood council president has used color and art to bring joy to Chuauma, a hillside section of the capital, La Paz. The buildings were previously the colors of dirt, adobe, and brick. Now they are marvelous multicolored murals. The project was the brainchild of 59-year-old Tomasa Gutierrez Troqui, an indigenous Bolivian woman who never went to school but bloomed after taking up the leadership role in her community. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.